It'll be cool if we could all get our sound working so that we could talk. Hello? Okay, I guess we'll wait a little bit longer and then we'll get started. Like till 7:05, I guess. I'm afraid I misjudged the time, so this is only going to go till 8:15. So it won't be till 9. Okay, cool. You could turn on your sound if you want. I don't think there'll be a big turn up today because it's Christmas time. So people must be doing other stuff. It'll be a relatively quick-paced presentation. Okay, I guess I'll get started. I have an idea. Because we're going to run out of time, I realized. So I pre-recorded some of the actual parts of the presentation in order to make it go a little bit faster. Because I speak slow. So I have a YouTube channel called Fresh Coat Soda, and I'll be posting up all the videos and stuff on it. Okay, so here's the introduction. Can you tell me if you can hear the YouTube video? Okay, so I guess I'll present. Hi, Naresh. How's it going? We're going to run a little bit short on time, so I'm going to sort of rush through this. So while we're trying to, we're going through exercises, don't try and write the perfect code while learning. Just experiment, explore, and get used to the syntax. Making mistakes is okay while you're working, while you're learning, and move fast and make the mistakes. Don't get discouraged if you run into an issue or something at first. There will be things you get and you don't get. Ask questions, get clarification. That's why I'm here. You don't need a degree or to be a genius to code. You just need discipline, persistence, and resilience, and learn as you go. Learn hands-on. Okay, so what is this meetup about? The purpose of this group is to create a knowledge sharing enhancement avenue for people interested in technology through hands-on exercises and tutorships. in anything technical. This includes hardware, software, security, etc. We also want to provide an avenue for networking amongst professionals and companies. We'll have live meetings later on as the group grows and develops. I was hoping later on to do more interesting projects like robotics and controlling it through a web application and stuff like that, or home control systems. So, who am I? I'm a computer engineering graduate, and I sidetracked into healthcare for a while. I've worked in everything from digital hardware to business intelligence and databases and web development for big and small companies. I've done several boot camps to enhance my knowledge in the past, and I've coded for quite some time. I'm relatively active and like to lift weights outside of programming, and I'm skinny, even though I lift weights. Unfortunately, I'm not like Arnold. I like traveling, learning, and technology. I'm currently starting technical bootcamp. And in professional capacity, I've worked with languages like MicroCOS, BHDL, PHP, MySQL, T-SQL, WordPress, Angular, and many other languages. So here's a fun fact. Back in 1995, there were only 25,000 websites, and today there are over 300 million. That's food for thought. So web design and stuff, I believe in the future is going to become a mandatory skill set. So to start off, before we actually get into making stuff, I believe there's a couple of definitions for anyone in web technology that they have to understand. The first of these definitions is protocol. A protocol is basically the language programs speak over a network. So for example, if someone speaks only Chinese and can communicate only in Chinese, they can only talk to someone who speaks Chinese. And the same applies to applications. So applications have to be able to speak the same language in order to communicate with each other. In the case of browsers, they tend to understand something called the HTTP protocol, or HTTP language. So I'm going to share my screen. In order to show you guys some stuff. Okay. So this is my PowerPoint. Okay, so while protocols are the language programs speak over a network, a packet is basically a word in a particular language or protocol, which is sent over a network. An IP address, that is basically the address of your computer on a network. We can use a command called ipconfig/all to find your IP address and your machine address. A machine address is a unique hardware number used to identify your computer. This might seem like a lot at the moment, but it's not really necessary that you understand this in order to build a website. It's just something that might come up as you start dealing with more complex websites. So if you go to command prompt and type ipconfig/all, you will get a bunch of your network adapters, which are basically like things that are used to connect to the internet. Each network adapter has something called a MAC address or a physical address, which is your machine address. And when you connect to the actual internet, you will receive something called an IP address. And your IP address is your location on the internet. And it has the following forms. It's either numeric and of 4 parts separated by a dot, or it's hexadecimal and separated by double semicolons. This is the newer version of IP addresses because the old format just didn't have enough numbers to deal with all the new devices that have been created in order to connect to the internet. But that's not important at the moment. Let's skip ahead. Don't worry if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. This will all make sense one day. So Wireshark is a program you can use to actually look at packets. We're not going to get into that in this lecture, even though I initially planned on doing it because we were running short on time. So few more definitions that you should be aware of is network. A network is basically a bunch of computers that share resources. A subnet is a smaller network that connects to a bigger network. The internet is an example of a large network. A server is basically a computer that gives or hosts information for other computers, and a client is the receiver of that information. A database is something used to store and persist information. For example, your computer's file system is an example of the database, or Excel file is an example of a database. Anything that stores information, and books are even examples of database. But whenever I refer to a database with regards to web development, I'm referring to digital databases. These are basically databases that store digital information and exist on a computer. And for our final definition that we'll be covering is the internet. What is the internet? It's called the World Wide Web for a reason, because it's called the World Wide Web for a reason. It's because when you look at all the computers connected from a distance, it looks like a web. Note the net in internet, which stands for network. The places where the wires intersect are used to represent waypoints for relaying packets to their appropriate destination. So in a nutshell, we have covered the main definitions that you're probably going to encounter if you were dealing with web development, but they're not important for what we're going to delve into right now. So in the beginning, when the internet first came into existence, there was only one language used for presenting websites. That was HTML. By 1995, what they found was that HTML wasn't enough to provide a user-friendly experience. So they introduced JavaScript, which allowed websites to be more interactive and dynamic, which is another language that complements HTML. But these are all built around HTML. Then came CSS, which is used to make prettier websites that have colors and different layouts. That's all you have to know for now with regards to that. In this lecture, we'll only be covering HTML. Okay, so there are two definitions that you should be aware of. Websites and web applications. A website just contains text and media, like pictures or sounds. A web application is an application like what exists on your computer, like PowerPoint or Windows, except it runs off the web. Today, we will be creating a website, not a web application. So as we discussed before, the basic form of websites, or the core of every single website, is HTML and HTML files. HTML also stands for Hypertext Markup Language and is used for structuring data. It's made up of something called tags, which we will see in a moment, and is a markup language, something called a markup language, because it's composed of tags. It does not have to be run from the server or over the internet. You can create an HTML file on your computer, and it will open up in your browser and display as you want. There are different versions of HTML that all slightly differ on how they appear in your browser and have slightly different syntax. So for our first exercise, we're going to create a file on our computer with the extension HTML, and it'll be called Hello World. Type in Hello World into file's contents, and then we'll open it up in our browser and see what happens. Okay, so I already created it. You could try creating it yourself. So I created a helloworld.html file, and within it, I typed in Hello World. Now, if I was to open that in my browser, I would get a website that said Hello World in it. But the interesting note, even though it opened up properly in our browser, that is not correct HTML. But it will still display regardless if it's just plain text, because HTML at its core And most protocols in the beginning were just plain text that you could view with the wire, something like Wireshark that monitors your network. Okay, so if we look on the left, the base structure of HTML looks as follows. It has a doc type and HTML tag, followed by a closing HTML tag. Within the HTML tags is the actual content of the HTML page. And what this is translated into by your browser is what we see on the right. So if you open up your browser and go to any page like yahoo.ca and open it up and then press Control-U, this will work on Windows computers. I'm not going to delve into Macs at the moment. So Control-U. What will happen is in something called debug tools, which every single browser has, you'll be able to view the actual HTML content that your browser receives. So as you can see here, this is all the information that the browser is processing and converting into this pretty website on the left called, which is the Yahoo search engine. Okay, so let's delve into the basics parts of an HTML page. Every HTML page should have something called a doc type, which specifies the version of HTML being used, the HTML tag, which contains the actual markup for your website, the header, which contains information about the HTML page that we don't see presented to us in the browser, the body, which contains the markup for the stuff that we do see, and the page title, which is contained within the header and shows up in the tab of our browser. So first, let's delve into the version. Let's take a little bit of a closer look at what this is. There are different, as I mentioned before, HTML has changed a lot over time, and browsers need to be told what version of HTML is being used. So if you have angled bracket, exclamation mark, doc type, space HTML, closed angle bracket, this stands for the most recent version of HTML, which is called, or HTML standard, which is HTML5. And that would be specified at the top of your file, as shown on the in the diagram on the right of our screen. So this could vary. So no other examples of different versions of HTML are exclamation doc type HTML public, and what you see in the quotes is for HTML 4.01 strict. And there are other versions of HTML that could be used. The different versions are rendered slightly different by different browsers and have different standards. You can use the following website, https://validator.w3.org to check if your HTML is valid for the standard you specified at the top of your HTML file. The reason why you want to make sure it's valid is because having invalid HTML can cause your website to be displayed in different ways that are unexpected. And how it's displayed may vary by browser because each of the browsers process the HTML slightly differently. So you want it to be in the standard form that's expected, so it will be displayed in the same way. So if we look at this site, you can actually update. You could upload a file with your HTML and it'll tell you, or you could enter in the HTML manually and check it, and it'll tell you any issues that occur with it. Okay, so next tag is the HTML tag. Most tags in HTML, hypertext markup language, have an opening tag and a closing tag. The closing tag usually has a angle bracket slash and then the name. And the opening tag is just the name of the tag without the slash, as shown in the diagram on the right of the screen in the yellow square boxes. These tags tell your browser where the actual HTML page starts and ends, the actual content. Now we get to the header tag. This section is for specifying information about your page. Note the title inside the header. This is what is shown in your browser's title bar. So if you look at the diagram on the left, we have web security and technology. That would have been shown within the square brackets of title. Okay, and now the body tag. This is the tag below the header tag and has the content of your page. This body tag contains the markup for your actual page. So as I mentioned before, an HTML page is composed of several tags, and these tags could have something called attributes. So angled bracket BR slash close angle bracket is a line break, or basically the end of a line. It specifies. The angled bracket, the tag B stands for bold, and if you put any text in between those two tags, it's going to be bold, like in MS Word. I, similarly, is for italics, like in MS Word, and it'll make your word slanted to the side. For paragraphs, you'd use the P tag, and for headers, you would use the H1/H1 header, and that would increase the size of your actual text and present it as a header for your page. Like, for example, if you look at the top of the screen, you see the basic tags. In HTML, it would make the font look similar to this. And then we have tables, which are like in Excel, and they'll be used to present your data in a tabular format, which we'll look at a little bit more in detail later on. So then we come to the image tag, which is used in HTML to display images. And the SRC is an attribute for the tag, which specifies where the image is located, whether it's a website or somewhere on your server. And then we have the A space href tag, which is used for links. So remember, when you click on certain text and it takes you to a different website, this is the format of how it's done. Next, we have something called comments, and which are used for leaving notes that are not in your code, that are used by other developers to understand what's going on, and forums, which we won't get into now. As a developer, you should use Google to find information about these tags, because you're not going to remember them all always until you get more affluent of it. And there's no shame in using the internet. It's there for a reason, and it'll help you make your experiences in creating HTML a lot easier. You learn by doing. That's the key thing of note here. Okay, so let's delve into what a comment is. Comments in any programming language are used to leave notes in your code that will only be seen by yourself and other developers. They have no functional purpose except to clarify or leave notes in code. They do nothing. In HTML, you leave a comment using the following syntax: angled bracket, exclamation mark, // the comment within that area. And then to end the comment, you'd use // closing angled bracket. ASCII characters. So ASCII characters are used for displaying characters on your website that your keyboard doesn't have. The and sign, NBSP, is basically a space. Spaces in the code don't translate to spaces on the page unless they're in like real spaces, I mean with the space bar, unless they're in paragraph tags or P tags. If you want to see all the actual ASCII codes that you do have access to, you can find out about them by going to the following website. These come in handy in your web development adventures. So as you can see here, the ASCII/code.com has a list of all the symbols, HTML numbers that you could put on in your HTML page, and it'll be translated into an actual symbol like L or M, and many more. Like if we go down, we'll see that it translates into R if we have and #174 and semicolon. Okay, so let's try it. Let's make an HTML file that looks as follows. It's going to display in our browser, "You are amazing," and it's going to bold amazing, and it's going to have 2 spaces, and never forget it. So if we were to make an HTML file, let's create a new HTML file on our desktop. Make sure the extension is .html, and let's say exercise 2, and we will open it with Notepad, and let us create the syntax for that particular HTML page. So that's the actual text that we want to display. But we're creating a proper HTML page. So we have to include the doc type, which would be HTML. We'd have to create the opening tag for the HTML, the closing tag to explain the content of the HTML, the header, and the body, which is where our actual text is going to be displayed. And then within the head, we'll have a title. We'll call it amazing. And we want our amazing to be bold, so we put it in the B tag. And there is an end of line, so we'd use the BR. And we have spaces, so that would be and NBSP semicolon and NBSP semicolon. I suggest you try this, and if you don't get it now, this webinar is going to actually be posted on YouTube, and I'll send out the link in case you're interested. Okay, so let's see what happened. File, save, and now I'm going to open this in Explorer. And look, it was, we suddenly have exactly what we showed on the PowerPoint shown in the browser. There are also tools that will automatically generate the HTML for you, and all you have to do is modify the words like in MS Word. So you could specify that you want this to be bold, and it'll do all the work for you. Things have changed a lot. Okay, so links. In HTML, if you want to have some text that points to another website, you would have it in the following format. Angled bracket, A space href is equal to the website address in quotes. This would always be in quotes. And then the link text, and then the closing A tag. So A space href equals quotes, the website address, quotes, and that would take you to another website. So let's actually try that out in the page we just made. So let's create a link in the page we made to Yahoo and say Yahoo search engine, and take a look at our website. So we're going to refresh this page, and look, the text that we just typed down within the actual between the tags, Yahoo search engine, is here. And if we were to click this link, it'll take us to yahoo.com. Okay, I made a mistake. Oh, these quotes are different. So you had to make sure the quotes are in the proper type of quote. Otherwise, it'll have a problem like that. Okay. So I clicked it, and now it's taking us to Yahoo, as expected. Okay. Next, lists. In HTML, in order to specify a bullet list or a numeric list, you would use the following format. So let's take a look at what this does. Note that UL stands for unordered list, which is basically a bullet list, and OL stands for ordered list, which will be preceded by numbers. Every element in a list is contained within something called the list element tags, or LI tag. So let's see how this presents itself in our newly created website. So I'm going to put in both these tags, the actual content from the PowerPoint, and we can go and view how the website has changed. So see, we have the following. We have coffee, and these 8 things, I don't know where they're coming from, to be honest. They shouldn't be there, but every line here, this is for the unordered list at the top. So it should say coffee, tea, milk, and coffee, tea, milk. So the unordered list is the first list, which is preceded by bullets. And the second list, the ordered list, is preceded by numbers. I know what's happening here. What's happening here is that there's a hidden character that's not displaying in this. That sometimes happens. Okay, so next let's go to tables. A table in HTML has the following structure. It starts with the table tag, and every row in a table has a TR tag. And every column in a table, and columns exist within a row, will be a TD tag. So the code that's shown on this PowerPoint slide will translate in our web browser to what we could see on the very right. So as you can see here, I made the country word bold, as well as the number of people text bold. And I made them distinct columns. Then on the next row, I stated within the column for the next row that it's for Canada, and then the next column was 37 million. So as we can see here, it's automatically aligned in our browser, because that's what a table is, right? It's rows and columns, and by using the syntax, it'll automatically be gridized for us. And at the end, for every row, we have to end off the row, and for every column, by using a /tr, and for every column, we use a /td to specify that this is the end of the column data for that row. Tables were used extensensively in the past, prior to CSS. So iframes are a relatively new construct in HTML. They can be used, they came along later in the HTML standard, and they can be used to embed other websites in our website. You can change what is shown within an iframe with a link outside the iframe by specifying the target for that. Specifying the target is the actual iframe. So if you see target equals main content, and the name of the iframe is main content, this link is actually not going to update the current browser page, but update the content in the iframe. In the past, using iframes was very common for creating segmented websites with menus, but it's not so common anymore, because iframes actually presented an interesting security vulnerability in the past, which I won't get into. So next, we come about to images. So in order to include an image with HTML, you would have the tag img and the attribute src is equal to the image path, or the image location on the web. You can specify the dimensions of the image with using the width attribute and the height attribute, as shown here. If you don't specify those two elements, it'll automatically use the default size of the image. So just so you're aware, there are two types of paths that you can use to refer to files, the relative path and the absolute path. But we're not going to get into that at the moment. Basically, the relative path specifies, too much in detail, the relative path is best practice to use, and it uses the current location of your website as a starting point to find other files within your actual website. So using the dot dot would go up a level, dot would start at the current page's location, and slash would start from the directory root of your website. So if we had something like AMG src is equal to slash src image.jpg in relative terms, and we wanted, and our website was www.website.com as shown below for the absolute path. This would be equivalent to using the absolute path of JPEG. And this is assuming that our actual website was in the following location. So we won't delve into this more. This might be a bit confusing, but if you have any questions, just ask me. So if the page we're currently using was in a directory called file, and we wanted to view a file at this location, we could use the double dots to traverse or go back one directory, then go into a folder and view an image. I'd delve into this more if we had more time, but we don't. So now we're going to make another website. On the top, we're going to have a bit of text like shown in this image. And it's going to have a menu, the image on the bottom right of the screen. And it's going to have a menu pointing to different websites. It'll update an iframe to show different websites. It doesn't have to be a search engine. Note that this is not going to work with the HTTPS protocol, which is the new secure form of HTTPS. So we have to use non-protected websites, and we could find those non-protected websites that still exist at https://why-no-https for the sites. As a hint, you could use tables to segment the menu from the browsing page. So essentially, what I want you to create is the following. Bring to front. So it's going to have dummy text at the top, a menu on the left, and an iframe with the HTTP sites on the right. So we'll create that right now. So we'll go to our desktop, create a new file, new text file, ex3.html. Okay. Now what we're going to do is copy the body of our HTML file from our exercise 2 here. Then we'll delete the content here, change the title of this HTML page to iframe. At the top of our page, we're going to use dummy text. I like using something called lorem space ipsum. It's a bunch of dummy text that you can use to just use create placeholder text. It's all Latin. Okay. So we'll go back here. And this is going to be the content at the top of our screen. Okay, that's enough. Next, what we're going to do is create a table. Tables were often used in the past to segment a page before the introduction of CSS. So we create a table row, another table row, and actually we only need one table row, interestingly, because we have two columns. The right column is going to have the right column is going to have the iframe. So we'll have an iframe, and its name is going to be main content. The left column is going to have links. A for F is equal to, for the sake of this presentation, we'll use / Baidu, and target will equal main content. And we want another line. We'll call H for F is equal to. Let's find another site that is purely using HTTP still. So if we look at this link, we see sohu.com is still using HTTP. And HTTP target is equal to main content. Okay, so now let's take a look at what we got in our browser. Okay, so at the top of the page, we have our dummy text. Here's our iframe, but for some reason, our links are missing. And that's because we didn't enter in the text for the link. So if you recall, we need a closing A tag, another closing A tag, and within these tags, within the A tags, we need to specify what we want the link to say. Okay, so we did that, and now we have our link. So once we click, it should take the site loads. If we click on Baidu, took a bit of a moment. It should load. Let's see what's happening. Okay, it's complaining because the link is probably wrong. Yep, and it is. So I didn't put in the entire URL. So we refresh it, click on Baidu, and Baidu loads. Click on Sohu, and Sohu will load. Okay, so now we just created a website like they used to be created. These days, people don't use iframes that often because it's the standards and best practices have changed. So HTML wasn't enough. Back when websites were only HTML, pre-1995, they all looked like the diagram below. So it was just a bunch of text, links, and sometimes images. Let's take a flashback into the past. By 1995, it became evident HTML wasn't enough for a visually appealing website. So if we look below, these are how some of the newer websites in 1995 looked. So as you can see, here's an image. Here's a bunch of links. So they were getting better, but not quite. And then on the right is Yahoo in 1996, I believe. You can use the following link, archive.org/web/web.php, to see how the net has changed over time. It's called a Wayback Machine, and it shows you a list. It gives you basically a calendar that'll allow you to look at a website and see it at different points in time. So let's take a look. I'm looking at Yahoo. And see, these are all snapshots that it took at different times for Yahoo. And so if we take a look at it by clicking on one of these and then click the snapshot from the list, in our browser, in the Wayback Machine, it's going to show us what the website looked like. So it loaded. So this was an error, oddly enough. So at that snapshot, I've never seen that before. But on that particular day, Yahoo wasn't up for that version. So let's look at a newer one. So let's look at the 12th of July, 1995. So it's a bit slow. In fact, it seems to be freezing my computer. Okay, so here it is. This is not 1995. This seems more recent. But, okay, let's look at an older one. We'll go to 1997. Look at this snapshot. And this is how Yahoo looked in 1997. So as you can see, it's vastly different from what we see now. So then JavaScript came along, and the first versions of CSS. CSS allowed us to modify the appearance of websites, and JavaScript allowed us to create interactive pop-ups and behaviors for websites. Eventually, we were led to websites like as follows, like Amazon or Monster Creative Studio. Much more visually appealing experience and enjoyable. But we're not going to be delving into CSS or JavaScript today. And on a side note, there are many applications that do the work for you. You might have heard of Wix, WordPress, and many other platforms that allow you to not know a thing about web programming, and it'll generate websites for you. And in many cases, it's great for the situations that you need fulfilled, a cheap alternative to having a website built from scratch. And I do encourage use of them. However, for certain tasks, they aren't adequate. For example, for data entry and websites that process data or websites that have a lot of users, there are unique challenges that come into play. And these sites currently, as of today, although this may change in the future, are falling short in handling those situations. You got to remember that web applications are applications and can do everything an actual computer program can do. WordPress and other out-of-the-box solutions are great, cheap alternatives for common scenarios, yet they often carry a price for more advanced features because you have to pay for them, and you have to learn the framework, and sometimes building out solutions or extending the functionality of those frameworks can result in very bulky code because you have to work within the constraints of the framework. Otherwise, you're modifying core code. That might not make sense. I delved into something a little bit different, but don't worry about it. It's just that they don't handle all the situations. In certain situations, these pre-built platforms are very user unfriendly. And if you know how to code, it might actually simplify a lot of handling a lot of these scenarios. Okay, so that's all for today. We ran through it. Follow me on YouTube for tutorials. I'll be posting up this meetup. The first link is a shortened version of the Fresh Code Soda YouTube channel. And it could be found at https://cuttly/URE3G D9. Or you can follow me on my also follow me on my personal YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/user/NeilandJ. Our next online meetup will be on January 8th, 2019, and it's going to be Hacking 101, the net and monitoring internet traffic for non-techies. I hope to see you there. Does anyone have any questions? That's the end of, I know we ran through it today, but hey, Naresh.
Hey, great. Thanks a lot. No questions, but appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, if you guys are, you want to work on anything together or have any ideas, feel free to pass it along. Um, I'd like to hear your ideas. Or even if you want to participate and present, if you are familiar with um, programming, feel free to reach out to me, and I would be more than happy to set something up. Always looking for seeing new unique perspectives as well as technologies. Okay. All right. I'm wondering if there's any more questions that I'm not seeing. Are you guys seeing the chat bar? Oh, okay. Yeah, I see it. Okay, cool. So
Sorry, that was very good. I was just hoping you could put those links you just had up.
okay, I'll email them out and also
Oh,
post
you can
them on
email?
the meetup.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so we're gonna in the future, there will be in-person meetups, and I'm thinking of delving towards those as we enter robotics. But ideally, I want to integrate the different portions of this, like web development. We'll be delving into integration of systems,
Okay.
as well as a little bit of robotics, and that'll be pretty cool because it's not as hard as you think if you have a good grasp on the tools available. There are a lot of tools that are easy to use that
Yeah.
make it go a lot faster. So it's just being exposed to those. So yeah, that's all for now. I hope to see you guys later.
Thanks.
Okay, no problem. See you later. Bye.